Ask me anything about politics. If you got any questions about politics, let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know the politics can be really intimidating when you don't know too much about it, so I like to make myself available to try to answer all y'all questions about it. Politics can sometimes feel like learning a different language because we talk about it, like in shorthand. We talk about three-letter agencies. Maybe you don't know what the Consumer Financial Protection Board is. Maybe you don't know what USAID does. You don't know what reconciliation is. You don't know what the filibuster is. And, it can be really scary to try to get those questions answered sometimes because you don't want people to think, that you're uninformed. I've definitely felt that way when I didn't know anything about politics. So I like to make myself available here, and everybody can ask me anything that you like. And there's no judgments, there's no roasting, there's no debating. This is not one of those shows where I yell at you for having different opinions than me. That's a weird thing to say, Gabagool enthusiast. All right, so yeah, if you have any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, guys. I am here and available to answer all of your questions about politics. We just drove in. What's up, Carmine? Good to see you again. Just drove to Boise. We just got into the hotel room, and now I am here waiting to answer all of your questions about politics. You don't got to worry. There's no judgments here. You can ask me anything that you like. What's up, Ape God? Thank you for being here. So yeah, if you got any questions about politics, just let me know. There's no judgments here. There's no roasting. You don't got to worry about, if I ask this, he's going to think I'm some sort of MAGA lunatic, or if I ask this, he's going to think I'm some sort of cuck libtard. I am just going to answer your questions. Let's see here. Kemper Inspection says, why does nobody talk about Trump's OPEC 2020 deal causing Biden inflation? Well, lots of people talk about it, Kemper, but unfortunately, because the media and social media algorithms are controlled by billionaires who would much rather continue using, greenhouse gases, and they would much rather, have a Republican in office so that they can cut all of their taxes and regulations for their companies. All of that information gets drowned out. Like the people that we needed to convince about inflation were all getting their news off of social media, and social media was telling them that it was all caused by Biden and that Kamala Harris is going to be even worse and that they're extreme socialists or they're, exactly like Republicans, so you don't even need to bother voting. It's not a big deal. And this is, you're kind of proving my point here, Kemper, in that you know that and I know that, and so we just got to tell as many people as possible because making videos or retweeting is definitely not the move in order to get people that information. But thank you for your question, Kemper. I appreciate it. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments, Karen Harding says, how did the whole House vote to allow U.S. citizens, every single one? Um, how did the whole House vote to allow U.S. citizens? Karen Harding, I don't know what you mean by that. I think you meant to put something else and then forgot to ask the rest of your question. Joey, to be deported. So the whole House did not vote for every American citizen to be able to be deported. It was a select committee, and all the Republicans voted for that. But that is not like a bill. It is not a law. It is not, passed. I don't know if it might have actually passed the House. I'm not sure because you only need Republican votes to pass things in the House. Every Democrat could have voted against it, and it could still pass the House, but it won't pass the Senate because they would need a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, and no Democrats are going to vote for that. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. My name is Jared. I answer questions about politics. There's no debating here. There's no roasting. There's no judgment. This is not one of those shows where I yell at you for having different political opinions than me. I'm just here to answer your questions about politics. I know the politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. It can be like learning a new language sometimes. So if there's anything that you're unclear about, whether it is, who people are, like maybe you don't know who Hegseth or Patel are, maybe you don't know what USAID or the Consumer Financial Protection Board is, I am just here to answer all of your questions. It can be as simple or as complicated as you like. There is no such thing as a dumb question. Karen Harding says, wouldn't that mean Vance is a tiebreaker? Vance is a tiebreaker, but he would still need 60 votes if it is an issue that the Democrats can filibuster over. The only thing that Democrats can't filibuster is a thing called reconciliation, which is you can only use reconciliation for bills having to do with the economy. So a tax bill, a spending bill, any of that stuff, you only need 50 votes for. But potentially, he could break a filibuster if there are, no, I mean, he couldn't even do. I don't think he could break a filibuster actually, because if there's 59 votes, they wouldn't like go to him. Anyways, let's see here. Lucid Highs says, "Why can't we just meet down the middle?" So the problem with that is that the Republican Party has become so extreme that the middle is now basically just being a Republican. Like they don't compromise anymore. This is part of a decades-long movement that the right has been championing to both weaponize the minutia loopholes of government, weaponize norms and ethical moves in order to keep Democrats from being able to do anything. And then when they're empowered, just switching and being like, we're going to do whatever the fuck that we want. Yeah, their positions have become so extreme and they've been so immovable in any attempts to compromise with them that they are basically like holding America hostage for their extreme agenda. It is part of a million reasons why I tell people to never vote for Republicans. All right, Tony Cianucci says, "What should the Dems do next election? Who and what shift in policies, etc." So I don't know what like you're talking about federal elections. You could be talking about state or citywide elections. There are some states or areas where progressive Democrats do better than centrists, and there are some areas where centrist Democrats do better than progressives. It is my personal opinion that progressive Democrats and the younger generation of Democrats are more strong politically, but that might not bear out in the polling in a place like Virginia, for example. But I did just finish a book called The Persuaders, where they talk about people who are independent voters not wanting some combination of Republican and Democratic policies. They just need to be better convinced, by each side's argument. So yeah, I would just recommend that Democrats step away from, focus group tested messaging and just try to convince people, try to speak from the heart and try to be who you are, and don't try to say something that's not going to offend everybody. And Democrats have been a little too focused on writing the perfect message as opposed to just saying what you truly believe, and that sincerity, I think, is the thing that the American people are looking for. But I will say this also, that I don't necessarily think that there's any messaging strategy that the Democratic Party could use that would break through the billionaire blockade of all their messaging. Doesn't matter what Democrats say, the billionaires can edit it and twist it in a way to make it seem like they are bad in whatever sense of the word it is. And so, if we are going to get better politicians elected, we have to do the work of getting them elected. We have to talk to people in real life. We have to do the convincing and the organizing. We can't just sit around and wait for the Democratic Party to save us, because they don't have the resources to save us. As much as they would like to, I'm sure, they do not have as much money and influence available to them as the Republican Party does. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Let's see here. Hemi says, "But y'all have not leaders." The Democratic Party has tons of leaders. NCAA 25 Clips says, "Red or blue? Blue." Einstein says, "Have those that fraudulently scammed USAID out of billions of dollars been charged?" So I don't know what you're talking about. As far as I can tell, there's been no waste, fraud, and abuse at USAID. Everything that the Doge Commission and Elon Musk have said that they have found has been debunked continuously and regularly. They're actually spending more money than they are cutting, which is infuriating, because at the moment we are getting less in terms of government services and we are spending more, which doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Where's that money going? Seems like it's just going into these billionaires' pockets. And as far as has anybody been charged yet, the answer is no, because they haven't found anything. It is possible that once Pam Bondi gets around to it, she might have some frivolous charges heaped upon somebody, but that's what happens when you have a psychopath in charge of the Attorney General's office. They will just do whatever they want, like frog marching a judge when they could have just indicted them because they're trying to intimidate people. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Be the Best Today says, "Is this your comedy, Perry? Because it's not politics." I mean, what I'm talking about is politics. Big D says, "What government service are you missing?" Well, let's just go through the list. Let's see here. They have cut fundings For a health and safety program for firefighters. They have cut funding for black lung monitoring programs for coal miners. They've cut funding to suicide prevention hotlines. They cut the Narcan program, so now people are going to be dying of overdoses. Thank you so much to the Trump administration. They have relaxed self-driving car safety rules. So now, if you die because a self-driving car has run you over, then there's going to be no like legal compensation for your family because those rules no longer exist. They can no longer limit the amount of salmonella in poultry because they are understaffed and defunded. They are gutting Meals on Wheels and other programs for the elderly. That's pretty cool. The FDA is ending most of its food inspections, so yeah, I sure hope all of our food is safe to eat because that'd be really fucking cool if it was. There was a whole E. coli outbreak that the FBI wasn't able to report on because they were understaffed. Yeah, that's just a little taste. There's federal workers are going to be getting their benefits cut potentially. They've disbanded the team that investigates voting rights violations. So if somebody violates your ability to vote, and you want to like take them to court or try to sue to restore your right to vote, you have no recourse anymore. Pretty cool, don't you think, guys? Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Jewel Pen says, "LOL, FDA is not ending food inspections." I mean, they are, Jewel Pen. Also, that's not a question. So, if you don't ask a question, you are gonna get blocked. David says maybe the states will have to step up with their federal funds. Jewel Pen, Google it. You have the same Google available as I do. David, the federal government has a lot more money available to them than the states. And so all these states that have been using federal money for programs, they're using it because they don't have the money to do that. And it's not like they've just been sitting on their cash reserves drinking champagne and caviar, because, oh, the federal government's paying for it, so we get to keep all this money. They just don't have the resources available to them. And because red states require more federal funding than blue states do, it's red states that are going to feel all this stuff more than anything. It's the Rocketeer says, wait a minute, that's not cool at all. You're picking up what I'm putting down on. Let's see here. Jewel Pen says, Google admitted they are biased. That is not a question, so you are out of here, Jewel Pen. I warned you. Okay. Big D says, why is my news so much different than your news? Well, I get my news from a bunch of different sources to try to counteract any sort of bias, and perhaps you are not doing the same. There is a real rift between people that get their news from right-wing sources, people that get their news from mainstream sources, and people that get their news from social media. Chris says Google is biased. That is also not a question, so you are out of here. So yeah, tell me where live contains themes that some find uncomfortable and has been restricted. Well, that's bullshit. So yeah, my live just got reported for no fucking reason. So I'm gonna have to dip out and dip back on, everybody. So please come back and find me again, guys, soon. Goodbye. All right, I am still streaming on Twitch and YouTube. So stick with me and ask a question if you like. I am available for answering questions still on TikTok, on Twitch, and YouTube. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the live stream. My name is Jared Berenstein. I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics. Yeah, if you have any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. I am here to answer that. And, there's no judgments here. There's no debating. There's no roasting. I'm just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. I know the politics can be really intimidating when you are first trying to learn about it. I know it can be like trying to learn a new language. So I like to make myself available to answer all of your questions about politics. And there's no judgments, there's no roasting, there's no debating. I do not believe in making people feel stupid or ashamed for not knowing things about politics. I have definitely been felt ashamed for asking certain things about politics in the past, and so, I don't like the way that felt, and so I'm not going to do that to anybody else. There is no such thing as a dumb question. Your question can be as simple or as complicated as you like. What's up, Carmine? Exactly, round two. This is what happens when you accidentally, on purpose, report my live stream for bullshit reasons. So yeah, you can ask me anything that you like. It can be as simple or as complicated as you like. This is not one of those shows where I have you on and I yell at you for having different political opinions than me. This is just a question and answer scenario. All good faith questions will be given good faith answers. Carmine says, did you get your mic from the TikTok shop? No, I did not. Saran says, "Oh damn, USA, you get what you deserve for voting Ronald McDonald as your leader." Well, I certainly didn't do that, Ciaran, and it is upsetting that so many of my fellow American citizens either voted for Republicans or did not vote at all. And so that is part of what I am doing on here, is to try to mobilize people to not do what they did in the 2024 election, to get people to vote for better politicians, to get people to be engaged in politics, to get people organizing and activated, and to get people to connect the vote that they make to things that are going right or wrong in their lives. Because government can be a great source of good if we just let it be a great source of good. Let's see here. Ciaran says freedom of speech been silenced in the USA. It hasn't been fully silenced, but the Trump administration is going after freedom of speech pretty hard. But the fact of the matter is, I am on here, and there are plenty of progressive content creators who have not been thrown into the gulag yet. Rachel Maddow is still out there. Chris Hayes is still out there. So yeah, while they may take as many shots at freedom of speech as possible, the fight is not over. The war is still raging, and we are still fucking spreading the correct messages. Let's see here. Dabbit710 says, "Dear God, at least be educated if you're going to vote." Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody should, be as well informed as they possibly can be. Alrighty. Dabbit says the delusional paranoia is off the charts. I don't know what you're talking about, Dabbit. What do you think I'm being paranoid about? Also, ask a question, or you will get booted from the live stream. Stacy Clark says, "I agree." Again, what are you guys talking about? I haven't really said shit except for the fact that the Trump administration is attacking the First Amendment, which is blatantly obvious. I have 1,000 examples for you if you wish. Ciaran says, "But if you are traveling from Ireland to USA, they check our mobiles." Yeah, that is a real fucking serious concern, and I would warn anybody traveling to America to be extremely cautious. Dabbit says, "Why did you fall for Nancy Pelosi's wrap-up smear campaign?" I don't know what you mean by a wrap-up smear campaign, Dabbit. Jay says they're attacking all of the amendments. That is accurate. It's the Rocketeer says, "Did you see Stephen Miller's indoctrination is cool for kids speech this morning?" No, I didn't. I mean, Stephen Miller looks like a fucking vampire, and so I don't think that he has the appeal that children are really looking for. So, I'm not too concerned about his ability to sway the youth. He's got a real hello, fellow kids vibe if, the dude in that meme was a fucking monster that hid under their beds. You know what I mean? Alrighty. Let's see here. Dabbit710 says, "Feel free to ask Bing AI what a wrap-up smear campaign is, sweetie." All right, well, I invited you to be part of the conversation. You denied, so now you're out of here, Dabbit. See you later. Big D says, "Why are they taking our guns?" I haven't seen anybody taking our guns, Big D. Not Democrats, not Republicans. Harry Rochester, good to see you again. Would you ever consider voting red ever in your lifetime, or will it always be blue? So, that is a question that is like, are you so biased? Are you so blue team that even if there was a really bad Democrat and a really good Republican, you still wouldn't vote for the good Republican? And here's my answer to that, Harry Rochester. I vote for the platform in the general election. In the primary, I vote for the candidate. I try to find the candidate that I like the best and get them to be the Democratic Party's candidate for whatever office it is. But in the general election, I vote for the platform instead. Because regardless of who that person is, the Republican politician is going to want to cut taxes for the billionaire class, cut regulations that keep us safe, and not do anything about things like climate change, pollution, gun violence, etc. And the Democratic platform is to support the working class, raise taxes on the billionaires, and use that money to ease the financial burden of the rest of us. The Democratic Party is the party of responsible governing, where right now they've got a fucking psychotic child in the White House, and the Republican Party is doing nothing about it, or they're excited about all the illegal, stupid shit that he's doing right now. So yeah, I am not going to reward the Republican Party with my vote for being complicit in what is an attempted authoritarian takeover of America by the dumbest, fucking, most incompetent human beings to have ever existed. So yeah, that is where I land on that argument. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the stream. I answer questions about politics here. If you ask a question, I will engage with you in good faith. There is no such thing as a dumb question. If you get a little spicy to me in the comments, I might get spicy back. If you don't ask a question, if you're just spitting propaganda, I will block you. But if you're here to ask good faith questions, I will engage with you. That is my solemn promise. I don't block people just for having different opinions than me. And I don't care who you voted for in the past or if you didn't vote. I don't care if you're left, right, or center. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics and to help people, start their journey of learning about politics, because politics can be really complicated when you're first trying to learn about it. It can be like trying to learn a new language with all these three-letter agencies and just referring to people by their last names and words like reconciliation and continuing resolution. Like, what does this shit even mean? I am here to help clear up anything that you might not know. No such thing as a dumb question. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Lots of copy paste spamming in the comments. I haven't seen any yet. Top Guy says, why does AIPAC spend billions on our election and lobby more than 3/4 of Congress? So AIPAC spends billions on our elections because they want access to our politicians. They want to flex their muscles, but also they want to have the most right-wing conservative government here in America that they can buy. It's the reason why they funded a bunch of Democratic primaries, so that the centrist Democrat would win and the progressive Democrat would lose. And then in the general election, they would switch their funding into, to try to get the Republican to win. AIPAC is a right-wing organization. The current government of Israel under Netanyahu is an extremely right-wing government. And so that is what they're trying to do. They are trying to have a united conservative front, and America is a very powerful partner for Israel. And so when you have people that are right wing in American government, then they can get a lot of money and weapons from America. All right. Peter Kukla says, do you think Trump and friends will attempt to prevent the 2026 elections from even occurring? I do think they're going to try to do something. They might not try to cancel the 2026 elections. They will probably try to cancel the 2028 elections. But yeah, they're going to do all of the fuckery and shenanigans that they can to steal and cheat their way into more political power. It's what they always do. Igromania says, is Trump elephant? Trump is elephant. All right, happy Pride Month. Is it Pride Month? Red says, what's your opinion on welfare capitalism? Do you mean like the socialism for the billionaires and their corporations thing, Red? I think that's what you're talking about. Yeah, in this country we have capitalism for the poor and socialism for the rich, where giant billion-dollar corporations have massive tax loopholes and subsidies and shit like that. We use federal tax dollars to prop up corporations and billionaires who don't need that money, and we tell people who do need that money that they should struggle and strive and pull themselves up from their bootstraps. And I do not care for that shit. I am against it, Red, if that is what you were asking. Colin says, why didn't Musk secretly fund lobby groups instead of being overt about his politics? I think because he likes attention. I think he also did secretly fund lobbying groups. He did a lot of really shady shit with his money in that election, in addition to, wildly illegal campaign finance violations. Yeah, and electioneering. So yeah, I think he did all of it, and I think he likes attention, and I think that he viewed himself as being like a positive spokesperson for the Trump campaign. I think that he viewed himself as being like really popular, especially with like the male population, and the Republican Party did really well with males of all ages in this past election. So, potentially he wasn't wrong. Let's see here. Michael, 1980ish, says, no, you not when, why the RNC and DNC were founded. That I do not know. Veronica B says, yo, who do you think will win in 2028? I'm not thinking about 2028. I'm thinking about 2026, Veronica. Let's focus on the midterm elections. Midterm elections in 2026, please. Ulf Jung says, APEC would be called a foreign agent in some countries. I don't disagree with that. Let's see here. What are we doing here? It says, what's your opinion of the Carmelo Anthony case? I don't know too much about it, unfortunately. That is in the past. That was a long time ago, wasn't it? Let's see here. Red says, like a social democracy type. Yeah, I'm more of a progressive. I'm more of a Bernie Sanders AOC Democrat than I am a Pelosi Schumer Democrat. Oh, Laziest Avenger says no. Pride is in June. LOL. Oh yeah, so that person was just calling me gay. Okay. Veronica B says, "How did you feel about the Trump mass assassination back in July?" I don't condone any kind of violence or property destruction or damage to human beings, even as reprehensible a person as I think Trump is. I was not calling for anybody to try to murk him at all. But I think that it is, a consequence of the kind of politics that Trump has been touting, where he has been encouraging people to be violent. He has been encouraging his supporters to be violent. He encouraged them to do a violent insurrection. He pardoned a bunch of violent insurrectionists using the presidential pardon power. So yeah, he created this culture of violence, and now he is suffering the consequences of it. I don't condone it. I don't think anybody should do it. But yeah, I do think there's weird things about it. There's all these conspiracy theories about like were they real or not. And I haven't seen any substantive data to suggest that it was fake. I will say that there was a bunch of weird shit where if it came out that it was fake, I would not be surprised at all. Dank says, should we lower the age of consent? No, I do not think so. Michael 1980s-ish says wrong. What was I wrong about, Michael? Nick Gurr says, what has he said to promote violence? He told his supporters to beat the shit out of protesters. He told his supporters to beat the shit out of reporters. He said, wasn't it great? Why don't you just knock the crap out of those guys? He said, wasn't it great when the cops could just rough people up? And if you beat somebody up at one of my rallies and you get arrested, I'll pay your bail. So yeah, there you go. That's plenty of examples. There are dozens. You can Google it. It is well documented. Nick Gurr. So yeah, still waiting on what you think I am wrong about. My man Michael, still have not said. What are we doing here? Says, how do you feel, or would you condone the Biden family pardons? So my take on the Biden family pardons is I don't think any president should have the pardon power. I think it's dumb. And if Congress wanted to vote to take away the presidential pardon power, I would have said, great, do it. I don't give a shit. If you want me to get mad at what I consider to be, non-objective, fully subjective, and emotionally driven Biden pardons for his son and family members and shit like that, I have a list of like 100 Trump pardons that I'm gonna be mad at first. Hunter Biden, yeah, he broke the law. But so did Sheriff Joe Arpaio. So did, hey, pow, 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 I'm a cowboy. So did Sheriff Joe Arpaio. So did that guy who was fighting overseas and was doing fucking war crimes and assassinations, and everybody in his unit was like, this guy's a fucking murderer. He belongs in jail. And then Trump just pardoned that dude. Trump pardoned people that were beating cops on January 6th within an inch of their fucking life. Him and Giuliani were selling pardons for $2 million a pop. And Trump is currently pardoning corporations that have been handed $1 million judgments, and now he's saying they don't have to pay those. So these corporations that have been fucking you and I over for decades and are being charged millions of dollars because of all their fuckery. Trump is saying, no, you don't actually have to pay that anymore. So I'm gonna get mad at those before I get mad at a dude, pardoning his son. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Ape God says, if you need a mod, kindly let me know because tons of racism in the comments. I appreciate you, Ape God. And potentially, let's see here. Boom Bam Apple Slam says, but if it helps reduce the debt, isn't this good to take money for pardons? It's not going to the government, Boom Bam Apple Slam. It is going directly into Trump's pocket. So yeah, that's not going to us. Also, so rich people can just do every fucking crime that they want, or rich person can just do a murder and then give the government $1 billion and that's fine. Doesn't seem like a really good system to me. Boom Bam Apple Slam. But thank you for your question. I appreciate that. Boom Bam Apple Slam says, how do you know? It's in the news. It is all over the news. Let's see here. Pony Boy says, what's up with the judge harboring a legal alien? So that is it's a pretty thin case, in my opinion, Pony Boy. Could an argument be made in court that that judge violated the law? Absolutely. And I welcome the Attorney General's office to try to make that case. But the way they treated that judge was extremely immoral and unethical. There is absolutely zero reason why they needed to arrest that judge. They could have just indicted, I think it was a her. I'm going to say her. They could have just indicted her. That is what they fucking do all the time if a judge breaks the law. But going down there, handcuffing the judge, throwing them in the back of a fucking squad car, frog marching them out of the office, it was an intimidation tactic, pure and simple. It was them saying, play ball with us, or we are coming after you. And we're going to use the power of the federal government to punish you, our enemies. And that's fucking authoritarian fascist Nazi shit, guys. Like, it should bother you. If you think that that's okay, think about if that was you, guys. Ponyboy says, why aren't you talking about that snowflake? Why don't you answer that? I don't know what you're talking about, Ponyboy. Esme says, are you pro-choice? Yes, I am. Wait says, maybe they J6 her? I don't know what you mean by that. Okay. Neverland Rancher says, can we get rid of AIPAC and their demonic influence? Yeah, I don't like AIPAC. I don't know what the laws are around getting rid of them, but, I would definitely vote for any politician that would be more, in favor of standing up to AIPAC in Israel than acquiescing. Let's see here. Colin says, don't you think if Musk was more covert, he could have saved face with his companies? Potentially, but I think that he views his, activity in the limelight as being part of the reason why he's so successful. Everybody agrees that Tesla's stock price is, what do you call it? It's too high. It's over, what do you call it? What's the word? It's overvalued. Tesla stock is overvalued. And his theory of the case is that he has this image of being this like tech genius Tony Stark type, and the more that he is out there, the more that he is promoting this idea of what a genius he is in the public, then the better his stock prices is going to do, and the more wealthy that he becomes. But yeah, the interesting thing about the people in the Trump orbit, including Elon Musk and all these tech billionaires like Peter Thiel, is that they are they do things under the table to try to be as covert and and subtle as they possibly can, but they're also incompetent. So like all of this stuff eventually gets found out, sooner rather than later. There is a shadowy cabal of right wing billionaires led by the Kochs. That was really good at hiding their activities covertly, but they started getting outed around like 2009, 2010. But yeah, they're still out there doing their shady shit. It's just we're some of them we're not as great at seeing. Let's see here. Big D's said crackpots. I don't know what you mean by that, Big D's. Bars 8810 says, did you hear about Mike Waltz having to waltz his head out of the White House? Yeah, but he's just getting a different job. It's such fucking unbelievably it's unbelievable bullshit that in the Trump administration you can be that incompetent and then continue to be appointed to other positions in government. Liquefier one, that is a personal question and I'm not going to answer it. Alrighty. Walt says, you know what I mean. They treated her almost as bad as the January Sixers. Well, I don't know what you mean by treating the January Sixers bad. The January Sixers got they were able to go home. They received their indictments in the mail. They had a trial by jury, and many of them were convicted by a jury of their peers. They were convinced of the evidence and the case that the either the FBI or the state attorneys generals made. So yeah, I don't know what you mean when you say that the J6s were treated poorly. They did a crime. They were found guilty of that crime by a jury of their peers, and they went to jail. So yeah, it's completely different than what happened with the judge, where she was fucking frog marched out of her office to make her look bad. It was an intimidation tactic. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Crunchy Toe Liquor says, who's the first person you ever voted for? This is embarrassing, but I voted for the Green Party candidate in 2000. What the fuck was the dude's name? I can't remember what the dude's name was. But yeah, I was voting in California, so it doesn't really make a difference. But I was going to school in Ohio, so I could have registered in Ohio if I knew anything about politics at the time. This is what I would have done. I would have registered in Ohio, and I would have voted for Gore, and maybe he could have taken Ohio instead. But I can't remember what the guy's name was, but that's who I voted for in 2000. Nader, thank you, David. Thank you, David. Marcia says, "Will the schools now be recruiting the recruiting agency for MAGA?" So yeah, anything that happens during fascist regimes, like indoctrinating kids and shit like that, that's what they're going to be doing. If thank you, Ape God, we figured it out. Thank you, Peter Kukla. Liquid Fire says, "Do you love BLM?" I mean, I think that Black Lives Matter is a great message, and I think that it is a great movement. I don't know the people who are in charge of that movement and if they are good or if they are bad, but I do believe that police unfairly attack marginalized communities and people of color, and I think they should stop doing that. Corey says, "Do you know what the No Labels Party is?" I've heard of No Labels, and they seem kind of bullshit to me. Their policies seem like Democratic policies. It just seems like what do you call it? Just seems it seems like a nothing thing. Let's see here. Dan Blackwood says, "Unless you were in Florida, you didn't cost score that election." Yeah, but I could have done work. I was in Ohio. At the time. And what the fuck else was I doing? I was just being depressed, getting drunk, and working as little as I possibly could in college. All right. Colin says, "Do you think the U.S. will ever leave the two-party system?" Potentially, but I will call your attention to a couple of things. Number one, the American public doesn't seem to be doing good with just two options. They pick wrong more than half the time. So I don't know what more options is going to do for them. The Republican Party is working on legislation to make ranked choice voting illegal. So the Republican Party is the least open to having more political parties and having the ability to, rank choice vote, in which is, a way of, what do you call it? It's a way of making it possible for third parties to do better in politics. I don't think that the two-party system is responsible for the problems that people ascribe to it. I generally think that when people complain about the two-party system, what they're complaining about is the Republican Party generally. They just don't know that is the cause of what they are upset about. Let's see here. Liquid Fire says, "We're Bolsheviks, fascists." I am not a history major. My specialty is in contemporary American politics and not Russian history, so I do not know Liquid Fire. I can tell you this. I can tell you that there's never been a communist or a socialist nation. SMY says, "Trump running over backwards for Israel when it comes to Iran. Are we living in a Jewish fascist state?" So SMY, no, we're not living in a Jewish fascist state. The Jewish population in America does not want Trump to be president and to be doing Nazi shit. But we are potentially going to be living in an extreme right-wing authoritarian government if people don't do the work of stopping the Trump administration. SMY. So maybe let's step away from some of the anti-Semitic dog whistles. SMY. Let's see here. Can't speak for other states, but Ohio's politics is pretty much hard-coded to prevent third parties from existing. Exactly. I don't know what that is. Liquefier. Bombardo Crocodilo says, "Should people be ruled by the class of the richest people because they have proved to be most capable and valuable in creating value for everybody?" No. Bombardo Crocodilo. No. Hard no. Because here's the thing. The billionaire class is not altruistic. The billionaire class does not give a shit if you live or die. The billionaire class does not care if your children get cancer, if they get shot in their schools. They do not care if they could get a penny richer, they would murder you and everybody that you care about. They're fucking sick. They have like money sickness. They've got the fucking, that how they say that rich people have like the Midas touch because they're so good at creating wealth, they have the Midas touch. The story of Midas was a tragedy because he touched the people that they cared about and they turned to gold. It was a story about how greed is destructive, not just for communities, but for the greedy people themselves. So yeah, these people have like a fucking money addiction that means that they don't give a shit if their gas pipelines blow up a bunch of fucking teenagers. So no, I don't think that we should be ruled by the billionaire class because they want us to be their fucking serfs. They want to feed us their fucking pollution so they can live on fucking desert islands that are perfect and pristine, and they're eating caviar 3 meals a day, flying on their private jets to one of their fucking dozen mega mansions made of fucking gold. No, the billionaire class does not get to rule over us. We get to rule over the billionaire class. That's what the government is. The government is the people organize together to exert power over the people who already are powerful. If we get rid of government, then we all become fucking serfs and wage slaves to the billionaire class because there's no regulations forcing them to treat us like human beings or pay us a fucking living wage. No, absolutely not. Bombardo Crocodilo. Thank you for your question. I am sincere. I am very sincere about thanking you for that question. But that is an issue that is very near and dear to my heart. So yeah, I got a little passionate there. But I'm not throwing any hate towards you, Bombardo Crocodilo. I hope you're still there. All right, getting back into these TikTok comments. Marcia, what's the organization to join to help fight this regime? So there are three groups that I recommend people work with in order to fight back against the Trump administration. The first one is called Indivisible. Indivisible is an organization that teaches people how to be politically productive. It teaches you how to form your own political action groups, but they also have volunteer organizations. So like you don't have to do your own thing. You can just join other people's work. They are big on putting pressure on elected representatives to achieve certain outcomes. They are largely responsible for putting pressure on elected Republicans to save the Affordable Care Act in 2016. So there are people alive today because of Indivisible. Thank you very much, Indivisible. There's also Vote Save America, which is another organization that is great at getting out the vote, teaching people how to convince other voters. They have resources for canvassing opportunities. They dig into the polls and find out which are the races that are best for putting your time, energy, and money into. And then there's also Run for Something. Run for Something is about getting young progressives into politics. They help get people under 40 elected to state and federal office. I love all three of those organizations. Let's see here. Bombardo Crocodilo says, I just wanted to contribute a controversial point of view. Well, I appreciate you being here. I just heard of Ayn Rand. Yeah, she fucking sucks. Liquefier says, isn't Trump's kids all married to Jews as was Biden's? Liquefier, you're really coming off as an anti-Semite here, Liquefier. So I would love it if you stepped away from the anti-Semitic ledge there, my man. Let's see here. Is George Soros fascist or Sheldon Adelson? So I would consider a billionaire to be fascist if what they use their money for is fascism. George Soros funds the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is fundamentally anti-fascist. There are people in the party who are more center, like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, but they also have a very strong and growing progressive wing with people like AOC, Bernie Sanders, Maxwell Frost, Jasmine Crockett, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I would not consider George Soros a fascist, but Sheldon Adelson I would because he funds fascist-aligned politicians. Let's see here. Liquefier says, do you support Palestine? I support the citizens of Palestine the same way that I support the citizens of Israel. And I do not support the governing body of Israel the same way that I do not support the governing body of Palestine. Swatson says, all billionaires are the problem from Soros to Trump. Yeah, I don't think anybody should have $1 billion. I don't think that anybody should use their billions of dollars to, try to tip the scales politically. But the fact of the matter is, there are over 1,000 American billionaires. 75% of them are supporting Republican candidates. And so I am not going to tell George Soros that he can't be one of the few billionaires that is fighting against that Republican deluge of billionaire propaganda cash. We need all the help that we can fucking get. Even with people like George Soros and Mark Cuban and Bill Gates, we still don't have access to the amount of funds that 75% of all billionaires, including fucking Vladimir Putin, who is potentially even richer than Elon Musk, have at their disposal. So in addition to utilizing the tools of whatever moralistic billionaires decide to support the Democratic Party because they have a fucking soul, I think we also have to do the work. You and me, just regular ass people, we have to do the work of talking to people and convincing them and recruiting them, organizing, striking, boycotting, protesting, voting. Like, that's how we win. We can't just sit around and wait for billionaires to solve it, and we can't just unilaterally disarm our billionaires because then we'll be even more fucked than we currently are. Long Sauce Dragon, good to see you again. All right, Marcia says, if the government is for the people, by the people, aren't we the bosses? Yeah, that is the way that it's supposed to work, Marcia. Swatson says, I want to tell all billionaires to stop buying us, but MAGA is okay with them buying us. Well, MAGA is suffering from propaganda poisoning, the same way that everybody else is suffering from propaganda poisoning. There are 8 million Democratic voters who sat out the 2024 election because they were suffering from propaganda poisoning that was telling them that not voting was better than voting. And there are Democrats out there who voted for Trump as a fuck you to the Democratic Party because of Biden's policy towards Israel. And now it's even worse. And that was what I was trying to tell people, that Kamala Harris would be better than Biden and Biden was better than Trump, but nobody fucking listened to me and they voted for Republicans because they were suffering from propaganda poisoning. Alrighty. Sun has risen, says Democrats did not adopt any Chinese infrastructure advancements. I have exactly no idea what you mean by that question. Colin says, was moving away from the gold standard lead the USA being the global reserve currency? That's a little over my head, Colin. I apologize. Let's see here. Dan Blackwood says George Soros is like 96 and hasn't funded a campaign in nearly a decade. Can he live? Yeah, you know, the only reason why I know about George Soros is because fucking Fox News won't shut the fuck up about him as though he's the most insidious and politically active human being on the planet, you know. I think they hate him because he's a billionaire who donates to Democrats and he's Jewish. He's the perfect target. All right. Carmine says, I'm surprised we've gone this far without dark money not being mentioned. Yeah, you know, I talked about it subtly, you know, but I just didn't mention it by name. Kane Hedrick says, give it time and it will, LOL, as much as you hate it. I don't know what you mean, Kane Hendrick. George Soros has a family legacy as well. I don't know what that means. Kane Hendrick says, ever think some of voted for Trump because we thought it would make America great again? Yeah, Kane, the people who voted for Trump were lied to. They were lied to and they believed the lie. And I don't blame them for believing the lie. I don't think that they are dumb for believing the lie, but that is the fact of the matter. You know, the stock market is crashing, prices are going up, the wars are continuing to rage. In fact, there are more wars. Pakistan and India are potentially going to war. Israel is ramping up their war. Russia is not stopping their war with Ukraine. So yeah, all the things that Trump said he was going to do, he hasn't done. He lied. He lied to you guys, and I apologize for that. But you know, again, there are people on the left who fell for bullshit also. Let's see here. Somebody says, "Can I guest?" You know, I usually don't, but things have calmed down comment-wise. So I'll tell you what, I am going to let you on so long as you are cool. Alabama rep in Ohio, TG. Our Dixie forever. If you tell me in the comments that you are going to be cool, I will let you on. Bars8810 says, did you see Jasmine Crockett go live last night after they snuck that bill in? I did. Let's see here. This guy says, trust me, bro, I'm chill. All right, are you going to ask a question? I don't know what your fucking screen name thing means, but I got to tell you, I'm pretty sus, man. Rena, good to see you again. Soros's parents were Holocaust survivors, I believe. I mean, that makes sense. That's why they would support Democratic candidate and Democratic politics. Salt Lake VA stopped taking new mental health patients. Yeah, there we got more government cuts to government services, and we're getting less. We're spending more, but we're getting less. So that's the Republican policies right there for you. All right. Yeah, you trust me, bro. I'm chill. Are you going to ask a question or are you going to yell at me? Scott says, any shows coming up? Yeah, I'm currently on the road. I'm currently touring. I'll be on the road for a little over a week more. David Douglas says, the tax cuts. Yeah, the tax cuts for the billionaires, my man. All right, are you going to ask a question, my man? He has to come up. But, you have not told me if you're going to ask a question. You know, I'm fine if you don't respond because, you know, I am skeptical. I do not believe that you're going to be chill at all. All right. All right, everybody. Looks like the comments and the questions have really calmed down. Dayglow Ginger says, can you explain Zionism versus Judaism and why so much division? Colin says, do you think Soros being a Holocaust survivor shaped psychopathic tendencies from trauma? I mean, I don't know about George Soros being a psychopath, so I'm not really sure, you know, about that. Seems like a pretty okay guy to me. I think that you only fund, if you're a billionaire who funds Democrats, you're doing it because you think it's the right thing to do. You know, it's the opposite of a psychotic shit. Scott says, shelves show to be empty by the end of the month now? Potentially. What was that question I was about to answer from Dayglow Ginger? So Zionism versus Judaism. Okay. So Zionism is a word that means different things depending on who you ask. Zionism can mean that you think that the state of Israel has a right to exist. It could also mean that you believe that Israel has the right to ethnically cleanse all of its surrounding countries and turn that all into Israel. Anti-Zionism can mean that you support the freedom of the people in Palestine to exist. Anti-Zionism can also mean that you think that Israel should be blown off of the face of the earth. So it really is not a good word because it can be weaponized against whoever is using it. So yeah, as far as like being a Jewish person does not necessarily mean that you're a Zionist. And as far as the division is concerned, I believe that Israel is it's a political minefield, and so the billionaire class has been very effective at weaponizing it in order to fracture the left, so that they can install right-wing psychopaths who will cut their taxes and cut regulations for their businesses. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Liquefier says, do you follow the Talmud? No. My dad is Jewish. I am not. Liquefier says, are you part of Antifa? Antifa is not a group that you can be a part of. Antifa is a philosophy. It means anti-fascist, and I am anti-fascist. You sort of need more coffee. Good to see you again. Always nice to see your lives. Do you have any concerns on the Insurrection Act? People were saying that Trump was threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act on like April 20th or something like that, and he didn't. And it is possible that the reason why he didn't is because people were putting political pressure on Republicans. Business leaders were putting political pressure on Trump because they did not like the way that his tariffs were fucking up their businesses. And so, yeah, I haven't seen any new reporting on any potential, plans to invoke the Insurrection Act. So I'm not too concerned about it. I am much less concerned about the things that Trump says than the things that he actually does. I have a massive list of things that Trump has already done that I am concerned about. I am not going to start worrying about things that he could do in the future. Kakapupu, I'm back. The question of the day is, I'm not answering that question because it is not a question about politics. Flonksas, have you attended any of the recent protests? Have you seen any protest signs that you really liked? Yeah, I just can't remember any of them. I just remember seeing them and being like, that one was great. But yeah, I haven't been able to go to any of the in-person. Wait, no, didn't I go to one? I think I went to one. I can't remember though. Yeah, ever since, this year has been a blur so far. Me and my wife have just been so fucking crazy busy. But I know that we've been to at least one. Let's see here. Reincarnated Diogenes says, have you read The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli? Yes, I did read The Prince, but I read it when I was in 9th grade, and I remember very little about it. Colin says, do they screen for mental health with firearm licenses in the U.S.? No, they don't, and it's an issue. Scott says, are the Republicans turning on Cheeto yet? We're seeing cracks in the foundation, but we are not seeing any sort of like full-scale retreat from MAGA. All it means is that the political pressure is working and that we have to keep it up. There's not momentum taking down the MAGA movement. We have to constantly, it's like a tug of war, and we have to constantly, we need constant vigilance, like that one character used to say in Harry Potter, because otherwise the billionaires will they have so much money they can pay people to do this work 24/7, and we just have to be motivated by, self-preservation, I guess. So yeah, let's see here. Scrolling down to the bottom, Aubrey Thompson says, not really. Independents have started being turned off, but not MAGA. Yeah, I've seen reporting that says that a lot of Trump voters regret their votes. I've also seen reporting that says that only 2% of Republicans regret their vote, which is, not a lot, but it's enough to win elections. Liquefier says, do you have immigrants stay in your home? Liquefier, I know what you're doing, and I sure hope that you don't mind me just answering your questions soberly and sincerely. But no, I don't have any immigrants staying in my home. I would. I don't have a problem with that. Immigrants are a net positive on our country. So, I don't understand why people are so fucking butthurt about them because, again, they're better. Having them is better than not having them. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Aubrey Thompson says, yeah, almost no Republicans gave their regrets some independence to, and that's good. Carman says, when's your next book coming out? Oh, I have no plans to write another book. Evie says, hi. Hi, Evie. Colin says, is not screening for mental health of firearms leading cause for mass shootings? I don't know. It's probably a cause of mass shootings. I don't know if it's a mass cause. I think that the main cause of mass shootings is the availability of firearms, and I think that we need more legislation concerning gun safety in order to decrease the amount of gun violence that we have in this country. Let's see here. Liquefier says, "Cool, I'll send something your way." All right, sweet, yeah. Peter Kukla says, "Do you have random native-born citizens stay in your home?" Yeah, Liquefier, you just have some random native-born citizens staying in your home. Okay. All right, everybody. We are at almost an hour. I'm gonna head out so I can get ready for my show tonight. I am streaming erratically because I am on the road, so I do not have a regular schedule. So just gotta keep your eyes peeled. Thank you for all the support, for all the likes, for all the shares. If you want to support me by being a member of my Patreon or sending gifts or being a subscriber on TikTok or Twitch or whatever, feel free. I am not going to tell you no, but you do not have to if you don't want to. I got the I got the Patreon up, I got the store up, I got all that shit. Give me a follow on all the social medias. Yeah, check out my website for tour dates and shit like that. And yeah, just do the work, everybody. Be part of this revolution with me because I can't do this work all by myself. We got to talk to people in real life. We got to convince people to vote for better politicians. We got to convince people to vote for left-leaning politicians. We got to get people voting in primaries and midterms and special elections. Our voter participation numbers in this country are fucking pathetic. So yeah, let's get out the vote, guys. There are 85 million people who could have voted in 2024 and did not. Let's find those people and convince them to vote in 2026 and going forward. I believe this to my core that this country gets better the more people that vote. So yeah, do the work, guys. Indivisible, run for something, vote Save America. You don't got to reinvent the wheel. You can just join one of those great groups and do the work with them. All right, Liquefier, congratulations for being a real not great human being. I just want to let you know, I don't like you, Liquefier. I just want to make it clear that I think you suck. Just want to let you know, Liquefier. All right, see you guys later. Take care. Bye bye. Bye bye. Everyone have a great day, except for Liquefier.